Hello, Ken.
Hello, this is Ken.
Hello. Yes. Can you see me, Ken?
No. Can you see me?
I can see you perfectly.
Okay, but I can't see you.
Yes, you're right. We will try to find out how to solve this because something seems to be wrong here.
What am I seeing along the side of the screen?
Maybe shall I hang up and I try again?
I don't know.
Yes, because we cannot see each other. I'm here with Carolina.
But maybe it's because... Hello, Ken. How are you?
Hello, Carolina. I'm great. How are you?
Very well. Here we are not with the masks because we both have passed it.
Good. I'm going to take mine off as soon as we get connected and my technician can leave the room.
All right. Okay. Let's try again. I don't know why we cannot see each other. Yeah, let's say maybe a lo mejor la cámara está apuntando al otro lado. Eso.
Now,
there you go.
now,
Good.
great.
Okay. Okay.
There you go.
Here we are.
Carolina. Okay. Close the door, son.
Sorry, Ken.
Okay.
We are not technological. We are very joined to land and not to text. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. Don't worry. It's difficult for me. That's why I have a technician to help me.
Yeah.
It's very good to see you.
Yeah,
This is Blanco de Albilo.
Oh, yes, Blanco Albillo. Did you know something? Albillo is not a grape similar to another grapes in Spain. It's very unique and very indigenous from our area. It is not very common to hear about Albillo, but Albillo is, the only place where you can find Albillo is in la Ribera del Duero.
So you say Albillo?
Albillo, with two L's.
Albillo.
And Yolanda and I, were the two first elaborating Albillo.
And do you know? And I remember we drank this wine in the field, in your vineyard.
And you were playing guitar because the journalist, you remember, asked for you to play an invisible guitar. Oh, you did it so good. My God. It was so funny. Yeah. How are things? How is the confinement? You are still in confinement?
Yes.
In confination. Oh, I see.
Yes.
You are still.
Well, the day is the same for me.
The days are the same for you.
Because I sit on my own. This is my library. And I sit here on my own all day writing. That's what I've done for the last 40 years. But
so
the evenings, it's the evenings.
You, nothing have changed.
But in the evenings, everything's changed.
Yeah.
No theaters, no restaurants, no movies. Can't even have dinner with friends.
It's very sad, yeah. Well, here in Spain, we are beginning very slowly to, apparently we are in the normal or regular life, but we are very, very scared about everything, about the economy, about the illness, about everything. Because yes, we have to be very, very careful, and it is true. In our case, we both have passed the illness, and we have, how do you say, anticuerpos?
Immunized.
We are immunized. So we
because
are
you've had it.
Yeah, both. That's the reason, because we are not with it. But as soon as you go out to wherever, we all go with the masks, just in case, But we are immunized.
Okay, immunized, yeah.
So yeah.
Lucky you.
Yeah, we are very lucky. Yeah. How is Barbara?
She's great, thank you. She's very well. She's in the next room. She's probably listening to us.
We miss you a lot. We have beautiful memories of your visits to Valduero, and well, we always thank you the honor of having you as members of our club of barrels.
Yes.
And yeah, we are very
And
proud
I
of
enjoy
it.
your wine.
Yeah. Well, by the way, I was drinking your wine, Valduero
Okay.
6 years, the wine of your barrel, and this next year, this vintage, this current year, is gonna be a great vintage.
Really?
So we are gonna
2020.
yeah yeah
You
20
mean this 2020 that we're in now?
2020 paradoxically is gonna be a good vintage. It's a bad year for the world, but a good vintage for the grapes.
Oh,
So
good.
we don't elaborate every year Valduero 6 years, just the very special
Okay.
special years, and this is gonna be one of them. So
Good.
you should come. You and Barbara should come and see how is your wine.
I
How
would
is your
love to.
elaboration? Huh?
Maybe
But
we
normally,
have to wait until we have a vaccine.
yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's true. Well, you know what I think about 2020? It's gonna be a good vintage, but I don't know if people are gonna want to drink it, because as 2020 has been such a bad year, it's something like the the damn vintage. But on another hand, let me tell you that it's gonna be fantastic. Not only here, I've heard that in France is gonna be fantastic as
Oh,
well.
good.
Yeah. So here I have Alfonso that want to, because all of us have read your books, of course. But here we have Alfonso. As you know, he's one of the one member of the Valduero's family, very important member for us, and he has read it, but in English. Can you believe it? Which
Wow.
for one Spanish is really very challenging,
Yeah.
isn't it? Alfonso, come and tell him.
Yes, Ken.
Hello, Alfonso.
Hello. How are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
What a privilege, and a honor to have you here. Ken, that here your name is well. I don't want to say like Michael Jackson, but
No, please.
but close.
What things
Well,
you tell him?
Well, we've been raised, with your name all over our house, seeing our parents reading your books, our older brothers, our friends, all of us. And well, then after, when you said that you were going to come and you did came, was very impressive. Was also very impressive to know that a man like you not only knows Spain, writes about Spain, enjoys the Spanish culture, Spanish cuisine, and also Spanish wines, and even visits wineries and spends time with the people that makes the wine, So we appreciate it a lot. And one thing, we had some questions from some of our drinkers
And followers.
who, once they knew that you were going to be in touch with us, they were curious about knowing certain things. And one of the first questions, they just asked me right away is if you could tell us a bit about this amazing trilogy, The Pillars of the Earth, and your next book, The Evening and the Morning, which is not yet on sale, but how
we all are expecting. We all are looking forward.
Good. Well, as you know, there are 3 books set in the city of Kingsbridge. In Kingsbridge, in the Pillars of the Earth, they build the cathedral. And then in World Without End, the plague comes to Kingsbridge. It's very like what's happening today. It's called the Black Death, but it's a plague. It's very dangerous. And then in A Column of Fire, it's the terrible wars of religion of the 16th century. So 3 books about this fictional city. And then I thought, what was it like before? This city of Kingsbridge that I've written about so much, but before the cathedral was built, 100 years, maybe 150 years before the cathedral was built, what was it like? And how did it become a big city? Was it maybe a village once? Was it maybe just a few houses? What was it like all that time ago? And I started to think about that. And then I thought about that time in history when the Vikings were everywhere. And, you know, we think of the Vikings as rather romantic, but I don't think they were. I think they were murderers and thieves and rapists and slave traders, by the way. They were slave traders. So I thought about the year 1000. And that's when England was Anglo-Saxon. The Vikings kept coming to England and stealing everything. For the Vikings, England was like a supermarket where you didn't have to pay. They just came and took what they wanted.
And take what they wanted.
Exactly. And then also, just across the water from England, there were the Normans in northern France, and they were much more advanced than the English. So I thought, here are these three powerful groups. All of them want to control England. That seemed to me like a good setting. I could see how I could get some good stories out of that situation. And so that is what The Evening and the Morning is about. It's called The Evening and the Morning because it's the end of the Dark Ages. Dark Ages was a terrible time in Europe. All of the culture of Rome and Greece was lost. But the Middle Ages was much better. And Middle Ages led to the Renaissance, which we know was a wonderful time in culture. So here's the turning point from the Dark Ages to the Middle Ages, from living in dirty huts and wearing terrible clothes to a new kind of civilization. And I like turning points, you know. I think that's dramatic. And you always have a conflict between the people who say, yes, we like the new ideas, and the people who say, no, 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 let's keep it all the way it used to be. And you know whose side I'm on. So anyway, that's The Evening and the Morning. It's a story set in that turnaround moment in the history of Northern Europe.
When that will be released?
September the 15th, or I forget the Spanish date, but it's probably the same day or maybe a couple of days later.
Well, okay.
And normally, of course, I love to come to Spain and do interviews and have dinner and have lunch, and but I don't think I'll be able to this time.
Baby lamb is a must.
Yes.
What is?
Baby lamb. Baby lamb roasted is a must.
Oh, okay.
And let me tell you something. We have this wine that you see here is called Valduero, una cepa premium. That is a very, very unique and very limited reserva. We only elaborate a few very excellent vintages. We only elaborate 600 bottles, and we now have only 300 bottles. So this is my last treat. You have some of them here, but you have to come back and pick them up.
Okay, it's a deal.
and in the way, we will eat the baby lamb roasted, which is a must. Alfonso is true.
Life is not easy here, Ken. It's like in the Dark Ages. You really have to fight, you know, for your wine, you know.
I read in the newspapers, and I'm very sad to see that things are difficult in Spain because, of course, Spain being such a wonderful country, normally millions of people go to Spain for their holidays, and now maybe it's not so easy to do that. And so maybe the Spanish economy is having some problems. But all over the world, the holiday industry all over the world is difficult. And I'm very sorry that my Spanish friends are experiencing these difficulties.
Yeah.
You know, there is a Spanish musical of The Pillars of the Earth, which was supposed to open in Spain in October, and I was all set. Of course, I will be at the premiere. I want to be at the premiere, but now all over Europe, theatres are closed, and we don't know when they're going to open again. So it's uncertain, and it's a great disappointment. You know, I was in Madrid for a rehearsal of the songs in this musical, and they're wonderful. They're wonderful. I went with a bunch of people, and the singers were all on stage, and the orchestra and the band, and they were singing these great songs. It's going to be a great musical, but I don't know when we're going to be able to see it.
Yeah, I know. It's very sad, really. Very sad and very complicated. Hard times for us. Very hard times for us. Yes. A few moments ago, we were talking, Alfonso and I, that it's gonna be a really hard time for in general for the world, but in particular for Spain, because Spain is living from tourism.
Yes.
And and for us this is incredibly awful, and for our economies is really bad. As you know, we are lucky in this point, I mean Valduero, because we are exporting almost 60% of our production, so that's the good notice. But yeah, our country is suffering a lot, and I hope that maybe if the virus doesn't come back again, maybe we can have the opportunity in 2021 of doing things better, and because it has been very, very hard to see people dying, and so I hope that things are gonna change, and probably in the next summer have to be different, because otherwise, I mean, not only Spain but the world is gonna suffer a lot. So I am optimistical in that point, and of course, I really think that I don't know if what would you say if you were an advisor, for example, of Obama's couple, in that kind of international boards in which they try to resolve the big problems of the world, like pandemics, like hunger, like all of this stuff. Which would be your first proposal?
Recommendation.
Because this world is totally crazy. I mean, we are in a crazy world in which you don't know exactly if tomorrow you are going to lose everything, or if you are going to continue being alive. I don't know. I mean, if you would say yes to become in a part of that hypothetical global board, what would be your first proposal?
Well, you know, we can see, if we look around the world, we can see which countries have dealt with the virus well and which badly. It's very obvious that the numbers of infections and the numbers of death depend on how the government dealt with the problem. And the countries that have done best are the ones that were very quick to say, we have to lock down, we have to close the restaurants and the pubs, and the theaters, and we have to close the schools, and we have to find ways to track people who are infected. The countries that were quick did better, and the countries that were slow, like this country, the UK and the United States, they've had it worse. So we know now, but there are two different kinds of politicians in the world today.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people like, for example, the Prime Minister of New Zealand or the Chancellor of Germany, who are logical people. They say, okay, we look at the evidence, we talk to the scientists, we decide what is the best thing to do, and then we do it very firmly. And then there are the crazy people. There's Donald Trump. And in our country, Boris Johnson. And they say, no, it's not a problem. It's all going to be okay. Don't worry. And then they have to change their mind, but it's a little late then. And so the bad ones are people who don't look at the evidence and judge the evidence, don't listen to the experts. And the good ones are the ones who listen and say, okay, if that's what we need to do, we're going to do it now and quickly and thoroughly. That's what I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The same that I think. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
now talk about something more happy.
Yes.
I have two bottles here of the Valduero Reserva Premium. Good. 6 years. But I have two vintages.
You have two vintages. Which vintages do you have?
I have 2010 and 2011.
Okay.
Which is best? Which is better?
It's a question of taste. It's like to choose between for example, I don't know, a Ferrari and Lamborghini. You know?
Well,
it's quite difficult to choose.
If I had to choose between a Ferrari and a Lamborghini, I'd say I'll have one of each. And that's what I've got. But it seems to me that the 2010 is a little sweeter and a little more alcoholic, and the 2011 is a little bit more light and just a little bit more fresh and maybe a tiny bit more acid. I love them both.
A bit more, yes.
I love them both.
Yes, but totally agree. You are a good taster because you have defined each one, and it's not easy because the style of the wine is always the same. I mean, we call it. I used to call it, instead of Valduero 6 years. I used to, because of the six. I used to call it a Chanel number 6 because Yolanda, my sister, when thought in that wine, maybe 20 years ago, when we created this wine, we were thinking in enjoying especially the nose. And so you have defined very well the two different vintages, and it is not easy because, and it is true that 2010 is a bit more alcoholic. The other wine is fresher, maybe because of the acidity. And it's not easy, but both of them have the same line, that when you swallow, it's pure velvet, and this is
I'm going to open my bottle of the 2010.
Okay.
What a challenge. You're putting us to the test.
Well, I've already drunk many bottles of this, and I know that it's really great. I love it.
Ken, when did you learn about Ribera del Duero wines? Because they are not that popular in the UK. People in the UK, they know more about Rioja, and they don't know that Ribera del Duero is like the most prestigious wine region of Spain,
Well, I don't remember exactly when I learned about it. I've drunk a lot of really great Rioja. I like it very much, but I always had a little preference for Ribera del Duero. It's a bit more, it's quite subtle. You know what I mean? It's nuanced.
Yes.
And there's lots of lovely Rioja, and I've drunk a lot of it. It's very straightforward wine, Rioja. I mean, you know what you're going to get. And so long as you choose well, it'll be great. but it won't be. It'll be good, but it won't be generally very subtle.
Maybe this is richer. You find it maybe richer, fruitier.
Yeah, this is great.
Oh, thank you.
Oh. A great pleasure.
What an evening! What an evening!
So you now it's July now. So in your vineyard, tell me what you're seeing when you go into the vineyard now?
Oh,
what
now
do the grapes look like?
Now it's beautiful because you see, in winter we are in the highest land of La Ribera del Duero, in the highest point. So the winter is very sad, really. It's very cold. Sometimes of course, we have snow. And the summer and the spring, of course, and the spring used to be very cold as well. But the summer is like is where you see the leaves, you see the branches, you see the vine. How do you say florecida?
Blooming.
Blooming.
Yes.
Exactly. So what we see is we have 100 hectares, and all around you see green. You see that the grape is there.
Yeah.
And
but small.
Small, very. It's like it is burning. It is burning. Really, we are the latest of Spain in growing and in maturing, because our weather is really extreme, very extreme. So when the weather is so extreme, the maturation of the grape is really, really, really very slow. And this, by the way, is what gives us the quality that we have, precisely the weather, the extreme weather, And another thing, the poor land. As you know, this wine that we are drinking comes from a land that we respect a lot. Remember when you and Barbara came, that I told you my sister and I really think that we are a second in our land's history. So it's really very important to take care of our land, because it's what we have, and it has to be alive for our descendants. So the vines now are a spectacle, really.
and it's kind of surprising, because you wouldn't necessarily think that dry landscape and hard winter and hot summer, you wouldn't necessarily think that was a good situation for making a great wine. It's surprising. It's so different from, say, Bordeaux and Burgundy and California, Napa Valley. None of those places have those kind of extremes, and yet out of that really unusual situation, you make something wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the poorer is the land, the better is the grape. That's a little bit part of the secret. Here, this is very dry lands, very poor. In fact, people here 50 years ago was really very poor people. It was one of the poorest regions of Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes the wine special. That they have to really fight and dig the roots very deep.
And another thing, to not irrigate is very important as well, because our land is very clayey and absorbed all the water from rains.
Yeah.
And our plant is really strong, and as we never irrigate it, it is used to go very deep under. Exactly, deeply, to find that water.
The roots have to go deep to find the water.
Exactly, and it makes that the yields are really, really very low. And what happened, that when the plant has to feed less fruit, that fruit is better, especially if it is not irrigated. Because the worst thing, for example, is when we are harvesting, rains. You know, if it is begin to rain, it's awful because the grape absorbs all the water
Yeah.
and loses all the concentration.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, that's so interesting. I've heard that before, that it's good if the roots of the vines have to go deep and struggle to find water. And I guess the water that comes from very deep must have some different characteristics from the surface water.
Mhm.
Yes, yes, yeah, it does exactly. I mean, it's yeah, but it's mainly how much it's a very supernatural process in which there is no help. It's just very what nature gives, and the more it fights, the better.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you know something I'll never forget, being in your caves,
Mhm. You know
when
what?
there was a huge barrel of grapes fermenting, and your sister pushed up her sleeves like this, and she just plunged her arms into the grapes and said, "Smell that!"
Yeah,
And there
it
was
was
this
fantastic.
strong aroma of the fermenting
Yeah.
grapes. She obviously just loves the grapes.
Grapes are like their sons, you know. It's incredible. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you know, one day I was talking to my sister about the text that we were going to use in the brochures, and my sister always tell me, mm, be clear in one point, Carolina. We aren't ecologists just because of a fashion. We are ecologists. We respect the land. We don't use any chemicals. We don't use any sulfates. Not because because it is on fashion, just because we are very convinced, uh, but because we have had the experience that when you don't, when you care about the land gives you back a lot, a lot. The land say thank you permanently and gives you all the best of it. If you are careful with the land adores you. And it's something that is our experience, you know. It's not a question of I imagine. No, no, no. It's the most carefully we are with the land, the best grade we have.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yes,
it's an experience. Yeah.
like you, maybe the more careful you are with your research in terms of history, and I know that you are extremely yeah, careful with how you research everything, and the better and the more complex are the books. And
How how
yes,
how how many hours are you a day seated, thinking, working in what? Because it's very easy for us to go to a shop and to buy your book, but you know, to think in how many time passes you a day working
Well,
hardly.
I do this pretty much. I do it all day. I like to. I get up early in the morning. I like to start work early in the morning, and I really, around about this time of the evening, it's 5:30 here now. I very rarely work at this time of day. Around about 5 o'clock, I start to think maybe it's time to have a glass of wine. But early in the morning, like 5 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning, when I wake up, I have in my head, I have the next chapter of the book. And what I want to do is I just want to go to my desk and start writing it. I've got lots of energy in the morning. So I start early in the morning. I finish at around about 5, maybe 4 o'clock. And I do that every day, all day, Monday to Friday. And then Saturday I do business.
they let you relax a little bit.
Yeah,
Oh
that's
my
right.
God.
Yeah, yeah.
Good
And
people.
it takes that long
Hard life,
You know,
my God. Hard
people
worker.
ask me how long it takes to write a book, and one of these long historical novels, like The Evening and the Morning, takes about 3 years. And sometimes people say, that long? To me, it doesn't seem very long if I think about everything I have to do. And a lot of that is because, you know, it's easy to write something, a few pages, and say, well, that's okay. But of course, if you only write something that's just okay, you won't have a big bestseller. You have to look at it and say, okay, now how can I make this better? If it's okay now, can I do something to make it wonderful? And sometimes that means throwing away some things, but usually, mainly, it's going over it again and thinking about the emotion in the story, and emphasizing that. So when things happen in a story that you're reading, sometimes you care about it, don't you? Sometimes you say, oh no, oh, sometimes you say, oh, wonderful. Or you think, oh my God, I'm afraid. What's going to happen next? You have all these emotions when you read a good novel, and that's what we like. I'm a reader too. I read all the time, and that's what I like. I like it when the story moves me, and when I have a reaction to the story, and I love this character and I hate that guy in the story. These are the things that make us like novels. And so I go over what I've written again and again, and I say, now what do I want people to feel about this scene? And I need to make sure that they feel what I want them to feel, so that then they will need to know what happens next. And so they will want to turn over the page and read the next page. And, you know, sometimes people write to me and say, you know, I started reading this book and I just couldn't put it down. And I went to bed and it was 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock, and I just couldn't stop reading it. And I think, okay, that means I've done a good job, because it means they care more about the story than about real life. And that means I've had a success. If you think about it, you know, you lose yourself in a story and you forget about everything else. You're sitting at home and you've got maybe your kids and your husband or your wife or your parents, and they're all around you, and you're saying, don't talk to me, I'm reading this book. So the reader doesn't want to be in the real world. The reader wants to be in the imaginary world that I've created. That's success for me.
It's like going to theater, or like going to watch a movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
One thing, Ken, that happened to me, you know, when I read your book, is that it's the same, the one that you gave us, the Column of Fire. I bought the English version though, but you know, many times I've tried to, because I've seen other people that knows about history, reads about history, and they love history, and I've tried to fall a little bit in love with history. I bought even magazines with pictures, with everything, but I never managed, you know, to really fall in love with history. So I was reading your book, and honestly, I never thought about history. I thought about adventures, about romance. I can tell you that this is the sexiest book I've ever seen in my life. It's really a hard porn. I can tell you this.
It's true.
Maybe if you think that I say so, my life must be very sad, you know. But
I'm not gonna tell her. I'm not gonna tell her. Don't worry.
but it really is, you know, the how it's sometimes you think, wow, it's incredible. How can a written page can compete with anything you can find in internet, you know, or one image, but it does, you know. And so, but after all these adventures, all these sexy stories, all this intrigue, all this drama, I found myself that I had learned a lot, really a lot about time in history, and so much that after actually investigating through internet about all these places you mentioned, all these palaces, Holyrood, Stirling, in France, how they are, most of Chambord, most of them, they are there, and then you
Yes.
put yourself in all these places, and
You
uh,
travel to all these places. Yeah?
yes, I was so in love with this period of history in which you really understand this whole Europe. That I tell you one thing, the other day I was in a flea
You
market,
have made a miracle with him.
really, honestly, and I found
It's-
this old book, lost somewhere, written by a German in French.
oh my God, that
You
is.
will enjoy this. This is about
But with
very
Valduero, with another bottle of Valduero 6 years.
very interesting book. Your book is taking me to many other books,
Oh, good.
and to this period in history, and to, I mean, yeah, to this real history period. This is quite an, yeah, quite an, a discovery, a discovery.
Totally agree. Thank you for your books, Ken.
Uh,
Thank you, because what you make is a mixture between art, documentation. I mean, it's an art what you make. So thank you very
Thank
much.
you. That's very
Wh-
kind.
Which is look, Ken? Someone is asking you, uh, which is I mean, which is your author, your favorite writer? Someone is asking you.
Which is my favorite writer?
Yeah.
Well, of course, the greatest writer in the English language is Shakespeare. And before the virus anyway, I used to go to watch Shakespeare plays all the time. I've seen all of the plays. Some of them I've seen many times. Hamlet, I guess I've seen maybe 30 or 40 times.
Oh my God.
And it gets more and more fascinating as time goes on. In fact, in the lockdown, I had to sign some pages for first editions of the new book, The Evening and the Morning. And I had to sign like thousands of times. So I listened to a radio broadcast of Hamlet. It was perfect. I didn't even notice the time passing. I was signing my name 100 times, 200 times, 1,000 times, and I listened. So that was the last time that I experienced Hamlet, was as a radio show. And the thing about Shakespeare is that the way, of course, his language is a bit different from our English today, so it can be difficult to understand, but he uses the language so well. And I admire so much the way he does that. And I listen to the words and I think now, why can't I do that? What am I doing wrong? So that's part of, so I guess Shakespeare is the writer I love the most. I read a lot of 19th century novels. 19th century was the golden age of novels. English novels and French novels and Russian novels of the 19th century are wonderful. In English we have Dickens and Jane Austen, and George Eliot, and in French we have Balzac and Flaubert and Zola, and in Russian we have Tolstoy, and these are so many of the great novels that we all love, and we read them twice, don't we? Anna Karenina and War and Peace and so on. They're novels that we read again. And so many of them come from that century, and I love those. They're very slow moving, aren't they, the 19th century novels? They don't go quickly. It's not like a modern thriller where something's happening all the time. things move at a very steady pace. I enjoy that very much. So if I had to pick one other than Shakespeare, after Shakespeare, I suppose it would probably be Balzac, the French author Honoré
It's
Balzac.
fantastic, in my opinion. Balzac is fantastic. Yeah.
Well, I can tell you that Carolina, she loves
Yeah.
old books,
Oh, look.
and
Yeah.
she has.
Here we have one Quixote, but Quixote from Cervantes,
Of
but
course.
from 17th century.
17th or
So
16th century.
16th century, I
16th
think. Yeah.
century.
16th century.
Yeah, you can see the back cover is a little bit damaged, you know.
Wow.
Yeah,
But,
I
Well, this is really the most famous novel in the world because it's
Yeah.
the first novel. It's
Yeah,
the first
exactly.
novel ever written. Before Quixote, there weren't any novels, and this is the first one. So that's why it's famous. And really, there weren't any more novels for at least 100 years. And then in the 18th century, more and more people started to write novels. But Cervantes was really the first person to write a novel. And here's a question. Nobody knows the answer, but it's a good question. Did Shakespeare read Don Quixote? Because the book was printed, I think, in Barcelona, was it in about 1603? And it was translated, immediately it was translated into several different European languages. So Shakespeare could easily have read it in English because it was translated. And he must have been a man who read a lot, because he knows in the plays there are references to history and Greek myth and literature. He probably read Don Quixote. Shakespeare probably, I think, and that's my theory, okay? I think Shakespeare almost certainly read Don Quixote.
You should mention.
What a pity!
You should mention
Shakespeare,
that in your novel.
What? Let's put it
You should mention this in your novel.
What a pity Shakespeare didn't write a novel.
Well, you know what? I think that 16th century was really lucky because there were two hits, Shakespeare in England and Cervantes in España. Both.
Yes.
Is very difficult to join in the same period, you know. So yeah.
You have an old Dante book here as well.
Yeah, we have La Divina Comedia. How do you say in English?
Divine
Comedy.
Divine Comedy
of Dante. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I am a freaky of all books, and I by the way, in London you have fantastic shops of all books. I have to come back soon. The problem is that each time I go, you know, I need another case to travel back. I mean, to coming back. So as soon as we finish with the pandemic, you have to come to Valduero for the baby lamb roasted, and I have to go to London for my old books.
Very good.
We have to encourage people, you know, because sometimes TV is good, you know, but wow, it has done harm to people. We've lost a lot of our imagination and our capacity to create the pictures that you describe us, and it's a pity. And sometimes, well, I wish, you know, this pandemic would have encouraged people to read more and to really discover what a book is.
The difference between watching the movie and reading the book is like the difference between watching football and playing football.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Same game, but when you read the book, you make the pictures in your mind. Your imagination makes the pictures. You watch the movie, the pictures are just there for you. It's given to you.
Yeah.
When you read the book, well, first of all, you have to use your linguistic skills, because you look at the letters on the page and you understand them. And then you use your imagination, because the page says that this woman walks into the room in a red dress. And in your head, you have to create that woman and that dress and that room. You do some of the work when you're reading the novel. And I think that's why we really enjoy it more when we get into it.
Of course.
Because the eye goes down the page and all this is happening, and it's all happening in our head.
You are the director of the movie. You provide us with the script, and we are the directors of the movies.
Sometimes when we receive the grapes in Valduero, in the winery, we imagine what this grape is going to be. And sometimes Yolanda, when she receives one part of our harvest, that, as you know, we make it all with our hands, she's capable to imagine if this grape, just tasting it, before even of being wine, you can sometimes imagine, and this exercise of imagination is what makes us different to the animals, I think.
Wow.
The human being is capable of imagining, and this is incredibly.
So Yolanda tastes a grape and she thinks about the wine that could cut. Isn't that amazing? I believe that, though, because I've met her, and I've been so struck by the kind of, it's almost the spiritual quality of her connection with the land and the grapes. It's kind of amazing, really.
Yeah.
But it's kind of, it's almost supernatural.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't really explain it, but you can see just by the expression on her face.
Yes.
Fantastic, and the result is great.
We always used to see that, to say that wine is a kind of instinct, a kind of, to not lose your instinct, to not lose your senses, to keep your senses alert, because everything that is into them is a pleasure, so.
It's like you were mentioning, it's a very subtle thing, because everything is wine, but when you are capable, you have the sensitivity to find the difference, the subtle differences and the nuances between all this. Like you find the subtle difference between one character or another, and the way you describe it and the emotions is, that's the finesse of life, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, we have 4 minutes left, Ken. This is the bad part of technology.
Oh my God.
Just to keep you aware.
Well, I have a grandson who is 13 years old today.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
And he lives in California. So I haven't seen him for a long time because of the lockdown. But we're going to have a family Zoom meeting in 4 minutes' time, so that we can all sing happy birthday, because, we're here in London and he has some cousins in Birmingham and New York and also in California. So we're all going to say happy birthday to my 13-year-old grandson. And I don't know whether to envy him or not. I mean, think about being 13 again. Everything in front of you.
Yeah,
when you're 13, you don't know what's going to happen to you. Who will you fall in love with? Who will fall in love with you? What work will you do? Will you be a big success or not? Or will you be happy? What will your children be like? And he has all of that in front of him.
Would you go back to 13 years?
You know,
If you could, I mean.
It's a good question, because now I think how wonderful it would be. But then I didn't think it was one. When I was 13, I did not think how great it is to be 13 years old. I was pretty lucky. I was living in London. When I was 13 years old, the Beatles were new. And there were all these new clothes to wear. Men were having long hair when I was 13. It was a scandal. It was, people were so angry about men with long hair when I was 13. It was exciting, but I didn't think this is great. Now I look back and I think that was wonderful. The music, you know, the Beatles. How are we doing?
Neil's birthday Zoom is now.
I have to leave you.
Your Zoom.
It's so great to talk to you guys. And listen, let us cross our fingers that we'll be able to meet in the flesh next year. Let's hope.
Send all our love to Barbara and to you, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We love you.
Maybe see you next year.
We will.
Sure.
We will. Cheers.
Bye. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Que no se nos...
Well, muchas gracias a todos por estar con nosotros.
Claro que sí. Y ahora vamos a ver si Alfonso y yo somos capaces de grabarlo.
Eso es.
Tela marinera.
Tiene
Aquí
tela.
la tecnología.
Tiene tela.
Un abrazo a todos.
Voy a ver un momentín a ver cómo...
Mientras, ¿sabéis lo que os vamos a decir? Os vamos a contar una cosa. We are gonna tell you something about our Valduero 6 years. It's gonna be the best. For second year consecutively, have been named as the best wine of la Ribera del Duero. So don't lose it. It's fantastic for you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Enjoy. Finalizar. Vale, ahora esto empieza así porque... Entonces, sí, lo queremos finalizar ahora. Esto un poco... Vamos, esto...